ciel bleu, vole en silence, les cœurs des gens amoureux.
Hey everyone, so for today's video, I wanted to do a bit of a comparison video. You guys know I love doing comparison videos on my channel, but I also have a little thing for cream blush. These two launches just seemed too similar to not compare. I also do a series on my channel called Save or Splurge. I'll leave that playlist link down below if you guys enjoy these kinds of videos. But nevertheless, in today's video, I'm going to be comparing the new Air Matte blushes from NARS to the ELF Putty cream blushes. So I've been trying out these ones from ELF since the fall. These released in the fall, but this is a new release from NARS. I feel like Trendmood actually announced or kind of released a photo of these last year, and I was just waiting for them to come out. I was really excited about this launch. I have the NARS on one side of my face and the ELF on the other. So let me know down below, just give it a guess now, which you think are on each side of my face, and then I'll tell you later in the video if you were right. So as always, I hope that you guys enjoyed today's video, so if you do, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, and if you like me, I would love to have you back, so make sure to subscribe before you go. And with all of that, I want to first start off with the NARS, because this just released. This one is fresh in my brain since I've been trying it out. This is the Air Matte blush, again from NARS, and they retail for 30 bucks. They come in 8 different shades. I have the shade Freedom. They describe this shade as kind of like a mauve color. I would say this is kind of a more pinky mauve rather than a purpley mauve. It's a very flattering color. I think a lot of people will really enjoy it. Like I mentioned, these come in 8 different shades, and they tend to lean a little bit more on the light side. So I do wish that they had added a few more bright pops of color with maybe a little bit more pigment. That's just me going off of the swatches though on their website. You get 0.21 ounces of product in here, so that's pretty standard. So NARS describes this as a unique mousse blush that transforms into a velvety powder for a weightless cloud-like wash of cheek color. They also say that it's a soft matte finish and that it has a sheer buildable coverage. So let's talk about my experience with the formula itself. So something that I noticed immediately when I opened up the pot is that this is certainly a thin mousse-like texture, but emphasis on the thin. There are certainly some moussey textures that do feel a little bit thick, you know, like a cream cheese kind of whipped texture. This is much thinner than that. It's a very airy kind of velvety texture. So though it does feel moussey, it's not heavy by any means. In fact, this is certainly an incredibly thin texture. You'll also notice that this has quite a kind of soft feeling to it, a soft powdery feeling. It almost feels like a primer, like a really kind of blurring primer, but it's not a slippy like silicone kind of texture. So it's very interesting the way they were able to combine kind of a whipped moussey texture with a very thin kind of blurring texture. Really haven't tried another formula quite like this. I think NARS describes this in a pretty accurate way. It's definitely a weightless feeling to this blush, and it's certainly more of a velvety look. You're not going to notice the blush on your cheeks once you have it applied, and it's just certainly more of that kind of powdery, velvety look. But I will say that it's not a flat, matte kind of powdery look. You definitely still have some life to your cheeks. Getting into how the product actually applies to the cheeks. So for both of these, for the ELF and for the NARS, I used my ELF small stipple brush to apply them. This is my favorite brush to apply cream blush. It just blends these kind of products really evenly and softly. Such a steal. You guys, this brush is like $3. But anyway, when you apply the NARS onto the cheeks, you definitely notice that it has a touch of a blurring effect. It's a very smooth, moussey and thin texture, but I think that kind of soft blur is really nice. You don't necessarily see that a lot with cream blushes, so it's nice to have that kind of velvety smoothing quality to this blush. I think that's really what makes it unique. It does melt down into the skin in a really nice way, and in general it's such a sheer formula that it blends really effortlessly as well. Just a very natural blurred kind of cheek blush look. You don't necessarily see that with a lot of cream blushes. So I just find that this is a very unique product. I really like that about this product. as a whole, it just looks really natural and nice, especially if you're just looking for a sheer wash of color, because again, these are actually quite sheer. Now, I don't think that it's sheer in a bad way. Like, you can definitely see the pigment still on my skin tone, but I do think that darker skin tones will have an issue with the pigment. And I also do think that if you're someone like me that goes a little bit overboard with the cream blush sometimes, that you might be tempted to start to build up the product. Now, I definitely think that that's something that you shouldn't do with this formula, because the formula is so much more of a dimethicone heavy formula. This product will start to kind of slip a little bit. Now, when you just have a light layer on the skin, you don't get that kind of slipping, but I think just because of the way this formula is, because it's so dimethicone heavy, because it is such a whipped texture, the more you apply on, the heavier it's going to get. And that's just kind of the name of the game with a dimethicone formula. You can't really add a lot, because then any of the product under the cream blush will also start to slip around. And that is the case with this blush. With a sheer wash of color, that's not going to happen. But for me personally, you know, I like to go in with thin layers of product on my skin and kind of build up product. I think that gives me a really seamless look to my cheeks. With a cheek product like this, you're not gonna get a lot of pop and a lot of pigment, so that is a little bit disappointing. And I also think that if you're looking for a cream blush that lasts a really long time and won't transfer if you touch your face, I also think that this one doesn't work really well for that. I do see a bit of transferring with this product. If you touch your face a lot, I think the product starts to come off, and it's just not going to last as long because it doesn't have a lot of pigment. There are some people I do think that this would work really well for. If you are someone that doesn't wear a lot of foundation, if you just wear concealer and you want a really pretty, like, soft cream blush look with that touch of blur, I can see this working really, really well for you, especially if you don't have to worry about the foundation that you have on. And because it does have that blurring quality, you'll probably really like that your bare skin kind of gets that touch of blur. But personally, I'm a foundation person, so I don't like that this will start to look a little bit heavier if I build it up. I don't like that it runs the risk of the foundation kind of moving around under it. And as a whole, I just don't get that blush pop that I really want. So if you guessed that this side of my face was the NARS, then you were right. I just wish that I had more pop of color. Again, if I'm touching my face, I can already see over here where the product has kind of come off. As a whole, I don't think it's a bad product, but for me and what I need in my cream blush routine, I do think that it falls short. But let's talk about the ELF Putty cream blushes. So I have two different shades. I have the shade Fiji, which is on the side of my cheeks today. Such a pretty coral shade. And I also have, I think, what is my favorite shade, which is the shade Bali. And I'll show you how this looks on my skin and do a demo of this as well, just because I figure you guys would think it's helpful. So if it is, definitely make sure to let me know. But these retail for $6 a piece. They also come in 8 different shades, and you get 0.35 ounces of product in here. So I love that you get more product in here for a lot less money. I also do want to mention before we jump into the entire formula of the ELF Putty cream blushes, I kind of take the stance on my channel that I think people are willing to spend a little bit more money on a formula that really outperforms something that is more affordable. I don't like recommending products just because they're affordable, because I think that's a little bit counterintuitive, especially if I think that the formula just doesn't perform the way that I want it to, if it doesn't really stack up. That's just how I view makeup. I think it's actually kind of a waste of money to buy an affordable product just because it's affordable, when you can save your money and put it towards a product that you really love, even if it is more expensive. And that's kind of what my save and splurge videos are all about, keeping all of that in mind when talking about the ELF Putty Blush. ELF describes this formula as a velvety, lightweight putty blush that melts into your skin. It has a thin, putty texture that melts to a powder finish. You can hear that right away, both the NARS and the ELF kind of boast that they have a thin, powdery finish to them, and they kind of melt into the skin as you blend them. So that kind of cream to powder formula is really coming into play for both of these products. But I think the main difference between these two formulas is that the NARS has much more of that moussey, velvety, and whipped texture to it. So even though it's still thin, it just has a little bit more air to it. Whereas for the ELF Putty blushes, to me, they're just a little bit stiffer and a little bit thinner. They also, in general, to me at least, they don't read as a putty product. It's not like a Play-Doh kind of feeling, which, you know, I don't think is a bad thing. I don't think that you have to have like a gimmick to every product that you have. This to me, again, is more of a stiff formula that has a nice creaminess to it, but it's certainly a cream to powder finish. So when you apply the ELF Putty blushes, they certainly immediately, you'll notice when you apply them that they just have a lot more pigment. They just give you a lot more pop to your cheeks. They do have a very powdery skin-like finish once you've applied them. So all of that being said, I understand that not everyone wants the same thing out of a cream blush. So to kind of recap, I would say personally, I like a more skin-like, thin, textured cream blush. I want it to look really skin-like and really seamless with the other products that I have. And I want it to last. I think that these do a really good job of giving me everything that I want. I love that it's very skin-like. I love that that pigment and that pop really stays in place, especially now that we're wearing masks a lot. I find that these last really well on my skin as well. And honestly, the shades are very, very pretty as well. I know I didn't talk a lot about that, but this shade Bali is just exceptional. It's very, very even, and I just love that it's kind of that tawny color that I just don't see a lot of brands coming out with. It's really, really pretty, and I can imagine myself using this a lot in the summer. NARS, I think, is just better for those of you that like really, really light coverage makeup. If you don't wear a lot of foundation products, you just spot conceal here and there, and you do want a kind of cream blush product that will act as a blurring and a pigment product, then I think that this one will really suit you. And even though I'm not that kind of person, I can just imagine someone utilizing this product and getting a really gorgeous look that way. But for what I'm looking for, I do prefer the ELF Putty cream blushes, and they also happen to be a lot more affordable. If you guys enjoyed today's video, definitely let me know and give this video a thumbs up. And if you enjoyed it, I would love to have you back, so make sure to subscribe as well. And with all of that, you guys, I will see you in my next one.